Hey guys, it's Ch.4. It's the morning time, so I'm gonna try to do this quickly. It's a clock chapter. I might not actually do it quickly, but you know what I mean. You know. I don't know. Probably spoke way too much already, and I need that energy. Anyways, last chapter, they walked into the bedroom. That's gonna be fun. This chapter is called The Exploration, which I think Chris is just gonna explore her body. Anyways, let's hop right into it. Chris walked into his room carrying the surprisingly light Lyra Heartstrings on his arm, the mare he would soon be making love to. She was quite content being carried in the arms of the man she'd obsessed over for so long, letting her head rest on his chest. Listening to his heartbeat, it pounded with a fast and steady rhythm, letting her know just how worked up he was. It could be because he was so nervous about what they would be doing, or maybe he was just it's both. Or maybe he was just as excited as she was. She hoped it was the latter. Lyra let out a happy sigh, rubbing her cheeks into Chris's chest as she wrapped her forelegs under his arms, holding him lovingly. She enjoyed the warmth of his body against hers and the gentle rocking motions he made as he walked. It was a soothing feeling. She'd have to make him carry her like this more often. The human continued his slow stride, making his way to his large, custom-made bed, the same bed he would use to take his friendship with one of the most amazing mares in all of Equestria to the next level. Lyra was also so much more to him than just a friend. He was the biggest idiot for not seeing this sooner, but he would fix that mistake starting tonight. Tonight they would become lovers, and he would do everything he could to make her the happiest mare in all of Equestria. But he wasn't quite sure how to go about it. Ponies were a lot different than humans, so he wasn't too confident in his abilities to give Lyra the attention she truly deserved. Still, the thought of trying was a thrilling one, even if it was a bit scary. He wanted to explore every inch of her and make sure she'd enjoy her first and of many nights with him. He just had to figure out how. Chris snapped back to reality when he noticed his bed was only a few feet away. His arm started to tremble slightly as his heart pounded faster in his chest. He's nervous as fuck. Let's get it. It's okay, big guy. Lyra cooed, hearing his heartbeat increased in speed. She nuzzled her cheek into his chest lovingly, soothing his nerves a little. Don't be nervous, she reassured, giving him a light squeeze with her forelegs. The mare's actions helped him to relax, but he was still a little nervous about all this. He's never done anything like this with a pony. It was still a foreign experience to him. It felt like he was a virgin all over again. Once he reached the edge of the bed, he began to set Lyra down on her back. She giggled as he gently placed her head on one of his favorite pillows, resting her body on the dark red comforter. Is the ride over? Lyra feigned disappointed, looking up into Chris's eyes with a playful smile. Well, it depends on how you look at it, I guess, he gestured, grinning slightly as he positioned himself above the mirror as he got up on the bed. I'm just gonna look a whisper. The unicorn rolled her eyes, bopping him on the nose with her hoof. Don't be corny, she teased. Chris scrunched up his nose and blinked a few times, not expecting to be bopped like that. He looked back down at Lyra, who was now focused on his pectorals, rubbing his shirt into his chest with her hooves, feeling his muscles through the fabric. I like your chest, she announced suddenly with a smile. The human raised his eyebrow and checked the pony's actions. You're a silly pony, he leaned in closer to the mirror while wrapping his arms under her back, fully intending to embrace her in a kiss. Lyra looked up from his chest and saw that he was about to do, then licked her lips in anticipation. She wrapped her forelegs around the back of his neck, closing her eyes as her head tilted up, giving him a clear shot of his target. They pressed their lips together tightly, causing her to let out a blissful sigh into his mouth. Lyra could feel the tip of his tongue pressing against her lips. Demanding entrance, she gladly parted them, meeting his tongue with hers as they danced around each other for a while, until he tried to push deeper into her muzzle. She pushed up against him, sending his tongue back into his mouth with a stronger, broader one. The mare wasn't going to make this easy for him. Chris's tongue was easily overpowered, but he didn't care. He was enjoying the feeling of her wet tongue in his mouth, and the subtle, minty flavor it brought with it. Eventually, Lyra became belligerent and started to explore him further. Chris had no choice but to succumb to her stronger muscle, letting her examine the confines of his mouth. Lyra took in every inch of his unusual mouth, feeling just how different he was from her. She ran her tongue over his teeth, feeling his canines, and letting the sharp, jagged points poke and prod her tongue, helping to fuel her arousal. They felt so distinct, so exotic. They both broke the passionate kiss, gasping for air and leaving behind a small strand of saliva connecting their lips. Oh, wow, Lyra gasped. Why does every human have canines all of a sudden? Chris chuckled at the mare. You, like my mouth? He asked, giving her a wide grin. The mare simply nodded her head in response. He gazed down at the beautiful mare under him with a bright smile, but soon as his expression went to one of worry as he thought about how clueless he was in this situation, Lyra quickly picked up on his hesitation. Chris, she called softly, rubbing his chest with a hoof. Are you alright? She asked, giving him a worried look, concerned that he might be having second thoughts about all this. He just doesn't know how to proceed. Chris looked back into her eyes and a nervous laugh. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just not really sure what to do here. Lyra cocked her head to the side slightly, giving him a confused look. She thought it was pretty obvious that what he should do. Well, then a stallion... Wait, what? Fuck. Lyra cocked her head to the side slightly, giving him a confused look. She thought it was pretty obvious that what he should do. He wants to, I guess, tease you a bit and stuff before the main event, Lyra. Well, when a stallion loves a mare, he takes his... No, I know that, he interrupted. I'm just not really sure how to, he sighed as he thought more about what he wanted to say. Look, Lyra, can we just take this a little slow? This is all pretty foreign to me. Not that I haven't done this kind of thing before, just not with, Chris said again. I mean, I think I would like it if... could I just kind of explore you for a while? Yeah, sounding more insecure as his words trailed off. What? Lyra blinked at the strange question. She wanted to just say no and tell him to fucking rep me already. How much more of a tease can this human really be? Is this how it's always gonna be with him? Other stallions would have been all over her by now. She just hoped he wasn't regretting doing this all of a sudden. Well, Lyra, he's got a stallion, to say the least. Because we tease and we play around a bit before the main event. Maybe he was just a little scared. For all she knew, she was going to be the first pony to be intimate with him. He could still think this is a little strange. She hoped that wasn't the case. Celestia knows she was more than okay with this, but if this exploring will help him, then she guessed it would be fine. She just wasn't sure what his exploring would entail, but she had hopes of it. But she had hopes of what it might include. Chris picked up on her hesitation. I think you will like what I have in mind, he reassured her, trying to manage a confident smile as he ran his fingers through her mane. Lyra stared up at him for a while, but nodded her slightly, giving him his answer. Chris smiled back at her, gaining some confidence back with her approval. She watched him as he laid on his left side, propping himself up with his elbows still facing her. Lyra was curious about all this, but did she need to do anything for it? Is there something I should do? She asked. Yes, you stay there and keep looking beautiful, he praised with a slight smirk on his lips. Lyra huffed at him. Oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll get right on that, she retorted, sarcastically rolling her eyes. Chris gave a light chuckle before gently placing his hand on her chest between her forelegs. Wait, what? Chris gave a light chuckle before gently placing his hand on her chest between her forelegs. Lyra looked down at the warm hand that was now on her chest. She spread her forelegs out a little to give him easier access. Watching closely, she always enjoyed the raw feeling of his touch there, but he has done this many times before. Is this what he meant? Did he just want to rub her coat like he always does before they got to the main event? Chris continued to run his hands over Lyra's chest, running his fingertips through her soft mint green coat, taking a moment to really admire her. He had seen her like this before, but now it was different. It almost felt like he was seeing her for the first time. She looked so exposed and alluring now that he could finally accept his own feelings for the mare. All she had to do was spread her hind legs a little to give him a view of everything. His mouth started to dry up as excitement burned hotter with him, making his pants feel increasingly more bothersome the longer he took in the elegance. She truly was a beautiful creature. He moved his hand down lower, gently stroking her adorable belly up and down like he had done many times before, only now it meant more than just a friendly belly rub. It was erotic and thrilling all at once. He lifted his palm, slightly pressing his fingertips against her fur, running them across her abdomen for a while, hitting a spot that made the mare giggle. She seemed extra ticklish there. He made a mental note to remember that. Set a spot for future wrestling matches with her. Lyra laid there trying hard not to giggle. His fingers felt so tingly as he ran them over her. Chris never really used his hands on her like this before, and it felt nice. Maybe this whole exploring thing wouldn't be so bad after all, just as long as he kept using those delightful hands. After a while, Chris started to use his index finger, drawing little letters into her stomach, seeing if she would realize what he was writing. Sexy pony. Lyra scrunched up her face and bit her lip, trying to not laugh at the ticklish feeling and silly nonsense. Chris was spilling into her abdomen. She stuck her tongue out in this direction, blowing a childish raspberry at him in response. Chris laughed, but didn't stop his movements. He guided his finger over to her petite navel, tracing lightly around its edges, looking back at the mirror so to see if his actions were getting the reaction he hoped they would. Lyra gasped as a light chill shot through her body. It was a bizarre feeling, but very enjoyable. He had never touched her in that spot before. She cooed softly as he continued to trail his finger around her little belly button. Okay. Chris smiled when he got the positive reaction he was hoping for. It seems he was on the right track. The human looked back to his hand, getting himself ready to continue his journey. He laid his palm flat on her stomach before smoothly making his way down, feeling her body grow considerably warmer as his hand traveled. He licked his lips nervously as he got closer to her more intimate parts. Lyra watched his hand intently as it slowly descended, causing her cheeks to redden and her heart to beat a little faster. Thoughts of all the things his hand could play with down there rushed through her mind. She often fantasized about what those strong, flexible digits of his would feel like on her more sensitive parts. The unicorn prayed to Celestia that she would get her chance to find out tonight. Slowly, she started to spread her hind legs apart, giving him easier access and letting him know his descent was welcomed. Chris paused for a moment to look at the now fully exposed mirror. His cheeks burned as he gazed upon her small, delicate breasts, getting a perfect view of them for the first time. They had a similar shape to ones he was used to, only they were smaller and lower on her body. Her nipples looked quite similar as well, except they were slightly bigger and a different color. It was a darker green than the rest of her coat. They looked so soft and malleable. He just wanted to cradle them in his hands. Lyra watched him with increasing excitement, holding her breath as he inched closer to her breast. She brought a hoof up to her face, trying to hide her blushing cheeks as butterflies started to flutter around in her stomach. He was so close now. His hand made contact with her breast as his fingers brushed over one of her erect nipples, eliciting a sharp gasp from the unicorn. Her hind legs twitched at the sudden contact. Chris repeated the same action a few times, brushing her sensitive and swollen nipples with his fingers over and over again, sending tingles of pleasure down the mare's body. She had been touched there from past lovers before, but it felt nothing like this. His multiple digits added so much more to the sensation. She prayed to Celestia and Luna that he would grasp one of her teeth with his fingers and rub it between them like he would always do with her ears. Before she could think more about what she wanted him to do, Lyra felt his thumb and index finger pinch one of her sensitive teeth, twisting it back and forth, causing a moment to escape her lips. She quickly covered her mouth with the back of her hoof, hoping to suppress her reaction. She wasn't expecting it to feel as good as it did, but oh, Celestia, did it feel good. He kept rubbing the sensitive nub between his fingertips, making Lyra clench her eyes shut and blush brightly, trying to hold back more moans. Chris let go of her now tender nipple, rubbing it against his palm gently before cradling her breast in his hand. He kneaded and massaged it tightly, feeling how soft her breasts were. He wished they were made pillows as soft as this. Maybe she would let him lay on his head on her breast one day, or is that too weird? Who knows? Lyra whimpered slightly in disapproval. Having his hand holding her breast like that didn't feel as good as what he was doing before, but she had to admit it. His warm hands didn't feel nice holding her like that. She opened her eyes slightly, peering down at his hand, enjoying the relaxing feeling of Chris cradling her breast for a moment. Chris smiled to himself as he held her. So far, he was getting the reactions he had hoped for, and it helped him regain a little more of his confidence. In fact, it seemed like Lyra was even more sensitive than his past lover from his homeworld. The fact only encouraged him more, but it didn't mean he was any less nervous. He was only inches away from his true goal now, but couldn't get a good view from where he was. It all seemed normal from his viewpoint, but he wondered if she would feel different down there. What if she felt too foreign or strange to him? He took a deep breath, giving the soft mound in his hand one final squeeze before sliding his slightly shaky hand lower. Lyra's eyes shot open as she felt his warm touch leave her breast and descend lower. She watched with wide eyes, praying to Celestia and Luna and Twilight that he was going to explore her, now dripping wet marehood with those wonderful and amazing hands of his. Her heart raced as her excitement burned within her. She whimpered helplessly as he neared her aching sex. He was so close, so tantalizing close. Chris gently cupped her soft vulva in his hand, feeling how aroused she was just from the way her entrance radiated heat. She was definitely warmer than a human girl. He pressed his hand down a little harder, feeling her entrance convulse and wink, coating his palm with her natural lubricant, making him shudder slightly. It was an extremely arousing feeling, and he knew that the winking meant she was just as aroused and aching for more of his attention. And he would give her all the attention he could, but his nerves were getting the better of him. He started to gently rub her sex against his hand as he tried to build up his courage to keep going. Lyra stared down at his hand, yearning for him to continue, but he just kept rubbing her. It felt nice, but it only helped to tease her more. All the teasing was driving her crazy. That's what we're good at, though, Lyra. You wanted this, you got this. The flustered unicorn looked up at the human, who was focusing on his hand with an unsure expression on his face. Lyra bit her lip, mentally screaming at him to explore her more. She pawed at his chest gently with her hoof, trying to get his attention. Chris broke his gaze to look down at the mirror next to him. She looked up with pleading eyes. Keep going. Please, she begged softly. Chris swallowed the lump in his throat. He had to keep going now, whether he was ready or not. He laid back a little more, wrapping his arms that was propping him up under the mirror, getting a little closer to her body before running his middle and ring finger between her soaked folds. Lyra squeaked in response, shutting her eyes tight as her whole body seemed to tense up at his touch. Her marehood tingled with excitement as he traced her burning entrance with those magical fingertips of his. Chris continued to caress her, spreading her arousal around his fingers as the mare squirmed slightly in his arm. He stretched and separated his fingers, spreading her open, exposing Lyra's delicate insides to the world. As she gasped in surprise, he wished he was in a better position to see what she looked like. He relaxed his fingers and started to rub her entrance again, noticing a familiar aroma in the air. It was a strong, musky fragrance that could only be coming from the aroused mare in his arms. He had been around the ponies long enough to know that each mare had her own scent, but the odor was never offensive to him. He actually kind of liked how all the ponies seemed to smell nice naturally. But nothing could compare to Lyra's natural minty green tea scent. It was quite pleasant, and now it was overwhelming Chris's sense of smell. The fragrance only served to arouse him more, encouraging him to continue as if her musk was helping to fuel his excitement. Feeling bolder now, Chris moved his fingers over her clitoris, feeling it pulse against his touch. He firmly pressed his fingertips down on the slick nub, rubbing it in a small circular motion, testing to see if Lyra would react the same way his ex-lover did. Lyra inhaled sharply, jerking her hips into his stimulating fingertips. She pressed the side of her head against his chest while pushing a hoof into his body as he continued to assault her sensitive clit. If her hoof was a hand, she would have been grasping the fabric of his shirt tightly. His fingers felt so much better than a hoof ever did or could. They were so precise, hitting everything they needed to so perfectly. Chris started to massage her button up and down, pressing it into her a little harder, being rewarded with sharp grasp and yelps from the mare. Lyra's body was swimming with funny feelings. She just wanted to feel those delightful digits inside her so badly. Chris. She tried to make her desires known to the human, but couldn't form words under the onslaught of pleasure she was experiencing. Picking up on the mare's desires, Chris stopped his massaging, aligning his fingers between her now soaking wet entrance. He laid his head on top of Lyra's mane, just in front of her horn, as his fingers slowly pushed inside her warm, wet love canal. She felt so soft, yet there was a firmness making him have to push a little more to enter her completely. Alright. Lyra cried out in satisfaction, enjoying the feeling of being spread apart with his fingers. She was finally getting to live out one of her more frequent fantasies she had about the human. She could feel every little detail of his fingers as they pushed deeper inside her. Yes, she hissed in delight. Chris could feel her convulse and suck at him, consuming his fingers eagerly, wanting to pull him even deeper within her. His erection ached in its cloth prison, demanding to be set free, but he wasn't about to stop what he was doing now, not until she was satisfied. He started to curl and flex his fingers, getting a good feeling of her insides. He could feel all the soft ridges and little bumps of her inner walls, making him grunt softly to himself. Her texture was unbelievable. With his curiosity satisfied, he slowly started to work his fingers in and out, rubbing her walls with his smooth fingertips. Lyra squeezed her eyes shut, pressing her hoof into him harder as she whimpered and moaned. His fingers felt so wonderful, flexing and stretching inside her. They felt so alive, touching everything they could reach, turning her marehood into a soaking mess. She couldn't help but roll her hips slightly and flick her tail back and forth as he stimulated her. Chris started to change his tactics a little, curling his fingers slightly, and pushing up as far as he could go, rubbing an and massaging her upper walls, hoping he would hit that one sweet spot if she even had it. Suddenly, Lyra yelped in a surprise as he grazed over a sensitive spot deep within her that she didn't even know she had, making her whole body jerk reflexively, causing her horn to flicker with a faint golden aura. You hit something, she whimpered. Chris's smile grew a little, knowing that he found what he was looking for. He continued to massage that same spot faster and faster, taking his fingers as deep as he could go. Lyra's body tensed up, and her horn started to glow brighter and brighter as he picked up speed and pressure. Chris, wait! Ah! She almost screamed, shutting her eyes tightly, feeling a pressure starting to build up within her, but he wouldn't stop. In fact, this seemed to make him work faster. He kept rubbing her from the inside in ways she never would have thought possible. It was all just too much. Wave after wave of pleasure rushed through her body with increasingly intensity, making her hind legs buck uncontrollably and her horn glow brighter. She was helpless against the assault and could do nothing but let her climax wash over her. Chris looked at the now glowing horn next to him. He remembered Lyra saying something about unicorn horns being sensitive, which made him wonder what would happen if... The human stuck his tongue out and pressed it against the unicorn's glowing horn, licking it from the base to its tip in one slow motion. Lyra cried out in shock as her back legs stretched out and stiffened, arching her back to the sky, pushing her hips up into his hand even harder while she was bombarded on both ends with pleasure. Seeing as how his efforts were bearing fruit, he kept his attack on her horn, licking it slowly from the base to the tip, and gently kissing it as he kept pressing and kneading her sweet spots deep within her. Lyra's love juices were pouring freely now as her inner walls clenched down on the human's digits, making it almost impossible for him to move anymore. Being serviced from both ends like this was driving her mad. She felt like she was going to explode. Her body locked up and trembled. Chris! She screamed as her warm love juices shot out between his fingers, coating his hand and a part of his bed in her essence. Her horn exploded into a shower of golden sparks that danced and twirled in the air for a while before fading out of existence, much to Chris's surprise. The mirror's wall continued to pulse and twitch around his fingers. As she came down from her high, she panicked heavily, trying to remember how to breathe again. She half babbled between breaths, still in a daze. Oh, sweet Celestia. She huffed, trying to recompose herself. Her hoof pawed against Chris's body uselessly while she tried to open her eyes. Chris laid back, feeling proud of himself for being able to get such an amazing reaction from the mirror. It was safe to say that he knew what he was doing the whole time and was worried over nothing. In fact, he was pretty shocked on how much she seemed to enjoy what he did. And those pretty stars that exploded from her horn was beautiful. It was like a little galaxy had exploded from her head, and the little stars tickled his face when they touched him. It was amazing, and he loved it. He slowly removed his fingers from her glistening sex, cupping her entrance with his hand and gently massaging it. It helped her to calm down a little. Chris placed one last kiss on the tip of her horn, causing Lyra to shudder and moan softly. Feel good? He asked, grinning to himself. He's happy with his result. He's happy with the result he got. Lyra was still trying to wrap her mind around what had happened. Being pleasured on both fronts like that was a pretty new sensation for her. She didn't even know how he knew unicorns liked their horns to be licked and touched like that. It was a wonderful feeling, and she wanted to tell him how much she liked it, but she was still a little out of it. Curious. You. She tried to comment between her light gasps of breath. After a short pause, she was able to pull herself together a little more. You were right. I did enjoy that, she said happily. Chris chuckled under his breath. I'm glad you liked it, he responded softly. I loved your little light show, too. Lyra's eyes shut open. Oh, Buck, she thought to herself, not realizing that she had just exploded her magical cum into his face. Her eyes were shut when it happened, and she was so lost in the moment that that normally never happens to her, but apparently it did happen, and right in his face, too. She was so embarrassed. What if he thought that was rude of her to just do that all over him without any kind of warning? Stupid Lyra. You might think she's a weird pony who's into that. Wait, what? He might think she's a weird pony who's into that kind of thing, even if the thought was a little exciting to her, she wouldn't admit it. He didn't even know if it was, wait, magical cum? What? Hold up a minute. What? Magical cum. No, that's a new one for me. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that, she cried, jerking her head around, sitting up slightly, looking back at him. She gave him a sad expression, almost like she was on the brink of tears. Please don't hate me, I wouldn't have done that without your permission, she added quickly. Why is it everybody's like reaction always like, please don't hate me? Like what? Chris blinked a few times at this. Apparently what she did was considered a pretty bad thing. Lyra, it's fine. It's okay, honestly. I really mean it. I loved it. I'm not offended by it or anything. In fact, I would love to see you do that again, he reassured her, using the most loving tone he could muster. It was like watching little stars burst out and dance around. It was quite beautiful, he added. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. Did you just say it was beautiful? She thought, being taken aback by this. You really liked it? She asked, feeling a little bitter now and suddenly more turned on. Chris smiled at her. I loved it, he said, kissing the tip of her horn gently, hoping to prove his point. The unicorn shuddered at the kiss, but smiled at him, feeling a lot better knowing that he actually liked the demeaning act. It was a little weird that he did, but she wasn't about to complain. She laid her head back into his chest, letting herself enjoy what was left of her afterglow, snuggling in a little closer to him. Chris let the mare enjoy her high for a little while longer, still cupping her sex in his hand and laying soft kisses on her horn every now and then as he held her close. Still the magical cub. That's just a whole new one for me. Soon Lyra finished basking and smirked to herself a little. She started to sit up and move out of the human's grasp, much to his disappointment. She stood up on her legs and spun around to face the human. My turn, she announced, happily sitting back on her haunches. Chris only gave her a nervous look, but he sat up, placing his back against the headboard of the bed. You, want to explore me now? He asked, unable to hide the nervousness in his voice. Lyra gave a happy smile and nodded her head enthusiastically. She was really liking this idea of exploring each other. It was something that she had never really done with another stallion before, plus she needed to see what he was like under all that bothersome clothing that he was still wearing for some reason. I want you out of those clothes, Mr. Human, she commanded, pointing an accusing hoof at him. Chris wasn't surprised by the command. In fact, he knew it was going to happen sooner or later. That didn't mean he... Oh, shit. Oh, goddammit. Fucking dogs, man. Taking away my freaking time right now. But, I gotta make sure they don't kill each other. Okay. So she was pointing an accusing hoof at him. Chris wasn't surprised by the command. In fact, he knew it was going to happen sooner or later. That didn't mean he was any less nervous of what she might think after seeing him naked. He knew his anatomy was a lot different than what she was used to, but this had to happen eventually. He moved to take his shirt off, but was quickly stopped by a hoof that was now resting on top of the hand he was going to use to undress with. Wait, can I do it? Lyra asked with a slight blush. Chris stared at her for a moment, but relaxed his body, giving the unicorn a nod. Lyra bit her lip as her horn started to glow with magic. The same glow started to appear around Chris's shirt. Quickly lifting it up, Chris raised his arms, helping her to pull off the garment. Once it was over his head, Lyra threw the thing across the room. Seeing Chris shirtless wasn't anything new to Lyra. She had seen him like this a few times and already knew she preferred him without it. But what she was really excited But what she was really excited for was what he was hiding under that bulge in his pants. He was obviously extremely aroused at the moment, and Lyra had to know what he was like down there. The unicorn moved closer, eyeing her target like a curious little filly, burning with excitement. Her tail flicked from side to side as she leaned down, biting into the string that held his pants up within her teeth. Once she had a good grip, she gave it a quick tug, undoing the knot it was tied in, and his pants fell loose and could be pulled down easily now. She placed her hooves on the brim of the fabric, wanting to take them off the more manual way. Instead of using her magic, it just felt more satisfying that way. If only she had hands to grip it for this part. But before she could remove the rest of his outfit, Chris interrupted her by placing his hand over his pants, blocking her view and spoiling her fun. Wait, Lyra, it's going to look different from what you're used to seeing, he said earnestly. You might not like it. Every human always just like when they always just block their view, like, wait, you might not like it. Like, what the fuck? Lyra scowled, huffing at him in annoyance. She used her magic to move his hand away and he hand up in a way. I will be the judge of that, she declared, pulling his pants down with her hooves, not wanting to give him another chance to stop her. The fabric slid down his waist easily, causing his fully erect manhood to spring up in front of Lyra's muzzle. It stood up proud and strong, almost painfully so, leaving him completely exposed to the unicorn. Embarrassment and shame shot through the human as he looked down at the mare, hoping she wouldn't run or start laughing. Why would she run? Okay, Lyra's in way too deep, and so are you. So why would both of you run? Lyra said nothing. Her eyes were as wide as dinner plates, and her mouth was in the shape of a small O. Without taking her gaze off his hard arousal, she started to lie down in his lap, inching her face closer to the foreign appendage while pinning his legs under her body. She tilted her head to the left and right, looking out over every inch of what he had Studying him with a burning intensity, a small smile started to appear on her lips. "It's bigger than I was expecting," she exclaimed with a joyful expression. Thanks," Chris responded, not sure what else to say to that. Well, at least she wasn't laughing. The mirror studied the strong length standing before her. Admiring it fully, she reached a hoof out, gently touching the underside with the softer part of her hoof, feeling it up and down. Chris gasped at the sudden contact. It felt a lot nicer than how he thought it would. Her hoof was firm, but had a certain softness to it, and it was surprisingly warm. Lyra giggled at the human's reaction before continuing to feel his hard throbbing member against her floor. It wasn't too different than a stallion's. In fact, it was pretty much the same. It was just the shape that was off. It didn't have a flat head, but a round one, and his middle ring was missing. Still, it looked like it would feel wonderful going into her. The unicorn bit her lip as her thoughts became more lewd. Her mirrorhood started to tingle with excitement again as she reached both of her hooves around the back of his length. Pressing her nose up against the underside, nuzzling affectionately. What? Okay, what? Her mirrorhood started to tingle with excitement again as she reached both of her hooves around the back of his length. Pressing her nose against the underside, nuzzling it affectionately. "I like it," she's saying happily. Chris inhaled sharply at the sensation of her soft muzzle rubbing against his sensitive girth. It was quite an odd and slightly embarrassing feeling, but enjoyable. She looked so cute hugging him like that, too. Lyra lifted her head away, grasping the sides of his hard sex between her hooves, holding him there for a while. She pushed his member around a little, watching the way it tilted back and forth in front of her. It looked so adorable with its cute pink mushroom head, like it was wearing a little helmet. She giggled at the silly thought, but she really did like its appearance. It looked a lot nicer than other stallions anyway. She started to rub her hooves up and down on him, making soft moans escape the human's lips. She liked the sounds he made when she did that. It meant that he liked the way she was doing, but she thought how nice it would be if she had hands to do this with. It would probably feel a lot better for Chris too if she didn't have these stupid bulky hooves. Oh well, I'll just have to make do, she thought to herself. Lyra looked up into the human's eyes to gauge his reaction. He was peering back at her, panting slightly and giving her pleading eyes. It looked like he was enjoying it, but she had an idea of what he might like even more. He might not want to keep going after, but he did such a good job of making her feel good. She just wanted to do the same for him. She could wait until tomorrow when he was ready again. Then she would make him her stallion. Chris panted slightly as he watched the mirror play with his almost painful erection. It was a wonderful feeling. Her hooves had a very unique and squishy texture to them that only seemed to add to the sensation. It almost felt better than his own hand when she would use both of them to squeeze down on him. He wanted her to keep going, but before he could think of more of how nice her hooves were, Lyra licked him from the base to the tip in a quick motion. He gasped as his whole body shivered at the sudden feeling of her warm, slick tongue on his member. Lyra giggled and leaning down for another lick. This time she licked the tip of his head a few times, testing the that had accumulated on it. She pulled back, licking her lips, savoring the flavor. Tastes pretty good too, she said under her breath, more to herself than to Chris. The human didn't seem to hear it, but let out a soft groan at the lick. Lyra bit her lip as she aligned his tip with her muzzle. She peered up at Chris through her mane that was now covering most of her eyes, giving his head a light kiss. Chris inhaled sharply, trying to hold back the urge to buck up into her lips. "Lyra," he called softly to her. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched. The way Chris called her name like that made the mare smile and her body tingle with excitement. She was going to love making him feel good and getting him to call out. Wait, what? She was going to love making him feel good and getting him to call her out for her. The thought was exhilarating. To think that only a few moments ago she was worried that she would never get this chance to make him feel good and love him like she always wanted, but now her dream was coming true and she was going to make him feel wonderful. Lyra parted her lips slightly, encasing his sensitive head between them, as her tongue flicked back and forth on the very top of his pink helmet. "Oh, Buck," Chris grunted, using his new favorite swear word. Just replace that with an F, man. "Oh, Buck," Chris grunted, using his new favorite swear word he learned from the ponies as her broad, wet muscle washed his head, making his member throb and twitch against her lips. Hey, you can say fuck. It's literally the same freaking thing. Buck and fuck are literally the same thing. Lyra continued to tease his tip before slowly consuming him, sliding her tight pressed lips down as her tongue pressed him against the roof of her mouth, making her giggle around his length as he rounded head tickled the roof of her mouth. Chris held his breath as he watched this length disappear into Lyra's muzzle, making him grunt and groan in delight. Her maw was so warm and wet, and the feeling of his tip running over the soft ridges of the roof of her mouth sent shivers of pleasure down his spine. Lyra smiled a little around his length, closing her eyes as she sucked on him eagerly. Every once in a while, she would rub his underside with her tongue, making little muffled humming sounds that would send small vibrations through his member. Chris shut his eyes tightly, gritted his teeth, and grunted in pleasure as she sucked on him like a lollipop. Holy. He tried to say more, but the words escaped him. Lyra giggled in the back of her throat at the adorable grunts and groans he was making. The sounds only encouraged her to descend lower onto him. She continued to take more of him into her, only to be stopped when she could feel his tip hit the back of her throat, causing her to gag slightly. Opening her eyes a little, she could see that her lips were only a few inches away from touching his base. She closed her eyes again, determined to take all of him. Repositioning herself a little, she started to move down more, pushing him deeper into her throat until she could feel her lips kiss his base. She suppressed the urge to gag pretty easily. In fact, she was pretty comfortable, and now she knew that she could take all of him with little to no trouble. She was really going to enjoy making him feel good. Chris could only stare with wide eyes as he watched Lyra take him in completely. Oh, God, he whispered to himself, pressing his back against the headboard a little harder. He could feel that his head was resting in the back of her throat, making him use all his willpower to not just hump up into her muzzle. Lyra started to massage the underside of his length with her tongue, stopping every now and then to make a swallowing motion, trying to get rid of the excess saliva that was building up in her mouth, causing her throat muscles to clench down on his tip. Chris shut his eyes as tremors of pleasure rocked through his body. He could feel her throat trying to swallow him. It was unreal. If she kept this up, he wouldn't last long at all. Lyra, wait. He started trying to warn her. The unicorn only smiled around her mouthful and went to pull her head back, taking a deep breath. Her nose once. Wait, what? The unicorn only smiled around her mouthful and went to pull her head back, taking a deep breath through her nose. Once his tip was free from her throat, only to drop down on him again, interrupting whatever it was he was going to say. She could feel him throb and expanded inside her mouth. She knew that he meant he was getting close. Chris gasped in surprise as the mare started bobbing on him, making it even harder for him to hold back. He reached his hand out, reflexively holding the back of Lyra's mane as she worked him. Lie. Chris groaned, trying to call out to her again. Hearing the human's moans only made Lyra move faster, almost consuming his whole length every time she pushed her head down. Sending his tip into the back of her throat, she pressed her lips around him tighter, sucking at his massive girth, wanting to consume his life essence that was buried deep inside her. Her body quavered at the thought, making her suckle at him harder. Chris arched back, cupping up into her mouth, unable to hold back any longer. His hand grabbed a clump of her beautiful silky mane, squeezing it tightly as his climax quickly approached. He had to warn her. Wait, stop! I'm about to. Lyra wouldn't stop. She wrapped her hooves around his hips and pulled him closer to her, consuming him deeper into her mouth, pushing his head all the way back into her throat again. She stayed like that, suckling at him like a starving foal, desperate for its milk, swallowing over and over again, tugging at his tip with her throat, while her tongue massaged his underside. Lyra! Chris shouted in pleasure. His whole body danced up in convulsions as burst after burst of pent-up seed splashed against the back of her throat. Lyra's eyes shot open in surprise as his length throbbed and shot thick strands of warm liquid into her maw, quickly filling every empty space she had within her mouth. She kept her lips pressed around his base, not wanting anything to escape, while she desperately sucked and swallowed, consuming everything he gave her. Chris snarled, gritting his teeth, still gripping Lyra's mane tightly. As his climax subsided, his body slowly started to relax once he felt the last spurts of his life essence leave his body. Lyra closed her eyes again, feeling his barrage of seed slow down, making her relax. Her grip around his hips. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling his barrage of seed slow down, making her relax. Her grip around his hips. She pulled her head back and started to hum happily as she continued to suck on his length and ingest what little he had left. Oh man, I'm reading too fast now. Breathing heavily, Chris let go of her mane, placing his hand on his forehead, and looked down at Lyra in complete awe. He felt like he just ran a marathon. That was amazing. The unicorn looked up at him as she slowly started to ascend off his now wet and still throbbing member. She took a moment to catch her breath before smiling brightly at him, opening her mouth to show him that she had consumed everything he gave her. Oh, Buck, she crisped moaned in response. The sight was unbelievably arousing. He felt his member pulse and harden again at the sight. That was... He tried to form words, but he couldn't find the right ones. He wanted her so bad at that moment. Lyra giggled up at him. I knew you would like that, big guy, she said between breaths, using one of her hoofs to rub his lower abdomen lovingly. She licked his now oversensitive tip a few more times. And you tasted pretty good too, she added, pulling back a bit, licking her lips, savoring the flavor. It's nice and salty. Chris just stared at her with wide eyes. His erection twitched and felt like it was even harder than before. Lyra beamed up at him, picking herself up and walking over his body until their chests were parallel with each other. She dropped down on top of him, getting herself nice and comfy and ready for a nice cuddle session. Resting her head under his chin. I'm just glad I could make you feel good, she sighed, happily nuzzling his neck a little. Fully intending to fall asleep like that, she wished they could keep going, but she knew he wouldn't want to after that. She would have to wait. Suddenly, Chris wrapped his arms around Lyra and rolled over, taking her with him, plopping her on her back under him again. Yep! Lyra squeaked in surprise, looking up at the human who was now peering down at her with a hungry, sensual stare. What are you doing? What's gotten into you? She asked, bemused. She was really comfortable on his chest, and he was a little too big for him to sleep on top of her. This is really awkward, cutting position for the unicorn. Chris gave her a confused look. What do you mean? I'm going to make love to you and make you my mare. This night isn't over yet, he declared with a determined expression on his face. What? But you just... I mean, aren't you done? She asked, clearly confused and shocked. Why is she confused? Now it was Chris's turn to give her a confused expression. Done? After what you just did, I'm pretty much ready to go all night at this point. Plus, I haven't even made love to you like I said I would, he said, adjusting himself to better align their hips. Lyra's eyes widened at this statement. You mean you want to keep doing this with me all night? She asked, dumbfounded. What? Well, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I? He asked, perplexed. The mirror looked up at the stallion for a short while, giving him an unsure expression before responding. Are you just teasing me? Most stallions just kind of do their thing, then lose interest in doing anything else until the next day or so. Chris looked back at her as if she just told him the sky was made of jelly. It's true, she shouted at him. He just raised an eyebrow at her. Well, I find that extremely hard to believe, but for me at least, I could go most of the night with you, if that's something you want. Suddenly, the human found himself being dragged down by the unicorn's forelegs around the back of his neck, pulling him down into a deep kiss that she quickly broke. Let's do it all night, she shouted excitedly. Chris looked down at the pony, slightly shocked for a moment. You sure if that's what you want? He started to smirk a little before continuing, but I can't do that right now. He paused to see Lyra's somewhat perplexed expression. What? But why, Lyra whined? You just said... Well, you see, I was just about to make love to the mare of my dreams before I was so rudely interrupted, and I would like to get back to that if you wouldn't mind, he teased, peering down at the unicorn with a smug smile. Lyra bit her tongue, trying desperately not to burst out laughing from the stupid corniness of his words, but she figured to complete that game. She gazed up at him, half-lit eyes, smirking a little. Oh, I'm so sorry, I wasn't aware. So where's this lovely dream mare of yours? She cooed, looking around the room for some pony. Stick around and you just might find out. This is getting too corny for me, it's weird. He restored in a lustful tone, peering at her with hungry eyes. Those last cheesy words excited Lyra to no end. The way he said it with that expression of longing and desire made the mare's body ache for him. She could see how much she wanted her in that gaze he had, and she wanted him more than ever. She gave him a happy hum, leaning her head up to kiss him deeply. Chris closed his eyes, laying down to meet her lips with his embracing the kiss as he pushed back against her. Again, his excitement burned deep within him as memories of how wonderful she felt around his fingers flooded his mind. This was it. He was finally going to take Lyra and make her his mare. They would be friends no more, but something stronger. They would become lovers, and he wanted that more than anything. Lyra's legs trembled slightly in anticipation as they kissed. The love of her life was about to take her and make her his own. The thought alone caused Lyra's heart to skip a beat. She prayed in the back of her mind that this blissful dream would never end. Chris continued to kiss Lyra deeply, feeling her shaky hooves around his neck, and as he reached back between their warm bodies, aligning himself up to her dripping entrance. He rested his tip between her warm, winking folds, prodding and rubbing her hair. As she moaned into their kiss, the heat emanating from her sent chills of pleasure down his spine as he coated his tip with her juices. The unicorn furrowed her brow in agitation. The feeling of him rubbing her was driving her insane. She had enough of all this teasing. Lyra broke the kiss, panting slightly. No more teasing, she growled, taking charge of the situation. As her horn started to glow, Chris could feel an invisible force being applied to his lower back, pushing him into the warm confines of her marehood. Chris removed his hand from between their bodies, placing both of them on the comforter, bracing himself as his tip sank in her tight, velvety entrance. He let out a low growl, clenching his teeth as she eagerly consumed him. Lyra arched her back, pressing her hips towards him, trying to push him deeper as his rounded tip easily stretched her apart. She groaned in pleasure as she continued to push inch after inch of his girth into herself with her magic. Her back legs buckled slightly as she took more than half of him into her. It felt like she would split in half if he just suddenly jerked his hip forward. The thought made her whole body shiver and clench down on him in anticipation and wanting him to do just that. Chris felt her body quiver under him as her walls suddenly clasped down, making him thrust his hips forward out of pure instinct, forcing most of his length into the mare, canceling out her magic. That cancels out her magic? What? Don't read that fucking text-to-speech thing. Okay. Lyra yelped out in surprise and clenched her eyes shut at the sudden feeling of being filled with his solid warmth, making her inner wall squeeze and pulse around him, trying to accommodate for his surprisingly large size as her tail flicked back and forth between his inner thighs wildly. Hearing the mare yelp suddenly made Chris stop his movements completely. Are you okay? He asked in a shaky, concerned voice. Lyra whimpered softly, opening her eyes to look up. Yeah, she said. Please, keep moving. I'm okay, she reassured him between breaths, massaging one of his shoulders with her. Chris only nodded and leaning down, scooping both his arms under her, holding her tightly against him as he pushed into her again, pushing their hips together and hilting himself inside her completely. Lyra let out a soft groan as she felt his tip kiss the deepest part of her. What? Lyra let out a soft groan as she felt the tip kiss the deepest part of her. She returned the embrace, closing her eyes while rubbing her cheeks on his, reveling in the feeling of being filled completely with his burning hot length. Something she had often fantasized about, and he felt better inside her than she ever imagined. She could feel every little detail of his throbbing member that was wrapped tightly within her. He felt perfectly, even with his exotic shape. It felt like they were a perfect match, as if his warmth was meant to be there forever. Thoughts of just staying like this entered her mind, and she loved the idea. I love you, Chris, she whispered lovingly into his ear. Chris nuzzled the side of her cheek, pressing their chests together, enjoying the amazing feeling of her warm insides enveloping him completely. He could feel every velvety soft ridge convulse and squeeze around him. She felt wonderful, better than anything he had ever experienced in his life. I love you too, Lyra, he whispered back into her ear lovingly. He wanted to stay there in her embrace, enjoying the warmth and closeness, but his natural instincts wouldn't let him do that for too long. Oh, come on, we're getting there. 20% more of the reading. Pretty sure it's gonna hit 1 hour. Lyra's heart melted with those words. She let out a happy sigh, closing her eyes, nuzzling the side of his face. The moment was too perfect to be true. She was lost in a state of pure happiness of being one with her love, and she never wanted to be found, but the pleasure of being made whole was soon interrupted by a feeling of that wonderful warmth inside her, leaving her body. Lyra moaned out in protest, hitting the emptiness it had left behind, but before she could vocalize her disapproval, the warmth came crashing back, making the unicorn cry out as she was filled once again. Chris started to rock his hips, starting out only to push back in a steady rhythm, sliding his member in and out of the morning mare. Lyra's body shuddered with pleasure every time he pushed back into her. She couldn't help the soft moans that escaped her lips with every thrust. She didn't care. She let her voice travel around the room and into her lover's ears, letting him know how much she wanted this, how much she wanted him. Chris groaned, feeling his tip grind against her soft, rippling walls every time he thrusted into her. He continued a steady rocking as he nibbled on his lover's ear, but she seemed too lost to even notice him, too busy wrapped her up too busy wrapped up in it in the blissful, intimate moment they shared. Man, these typos, man. Lyra could feel her love juices start to flow as Chris stretched her apart. He felt so much bigger than he looked at, and it was such a good feeling. You're so big, she moaned between breaths. Am I hurting you? He asked slowly, slowing his pace a little. Lyra slid her forelegs under his arms, wrapping them around his chest, squeezing tightly as she pushed her hips into his, trying to coax him to go faster. No, keep going. You feel wonderful, she whimpered. Chris didn't say anything, but did as the mare asked, picking up his speed while her inner walls massaged his length, making him grunt and groan through his teeth. He had to fight the natural urge to just thrust away at her. He wanted to take his time and let Lyra enjoy the moment. Lyra whimpered in his ear, squeezing her hooves against his back, and she bucked her hips up to match his steady thrusting. Her arousal was dripping and making a mess of the comforter under her, coating her love's member and lower abdomen, making Chris's thrusting easier for him. She could feel it. He was pumping in and out of her so soothingly now, but she wanted more. Faster, she whimpered softly into his ear. Chris was more than willing to comply. His steady rhythm started to increase in speed, causing their hips to make a wet slapping sound every time his soaked skin hit her fur. Lyra moaned as her back legs started to buck in their air, and momentarily tail whipped back and forth between Chris's legs, slapping against his inner thighs. Her insides started to clench and suckle him, trying to milk him for everything he had as her climax built deep within her. The human had to fight with all his strength to not lose it right then and there. Even with his previous climax, he could feel himself edging closer. The faster he pumped, the harder it was to hold back, but he could tell that Lyra was closer. She clenched down on him, making it a little harder for him to move his hips and making it even harder for him to hold back. He just had to hold out a little longer. Lyra quickly jerked her head back, giving Chris a lustful glare. "Kiss me," she demanded, pressing her lips to his and kissing him deeply. Chris pushed into her kiss, opening his lips, letting her tongue slip into his mouth. Lyra tried to explore him again, but she was closer to her own climax. That was hard for her to concentrate. This time, the human had the advantage, and his tongue was able to push hers back into her muzzle. His tongue twisted and rolled over hers, filling all the contents of her mouth that he couldn't before. He started to increase his speed even more, sending loud slapping sounds through the room as their hips collided. The mare's whole body was drowning in a sea of ecstasy. She shut her eyes tightly, moaning loudly into Chris's mouth. As her body tensed up from his onslaught, she convulsed and clenched down on him harder and harder, causing him to stop his movements completely as her murder splashed his crotch and lower abdomen with her sticky love juices. Mom? Is this Mom? She moaned loudly into his mouth as her back legs kicked out against the red comforter, pushing her hips into Chris while she let her climax overtake her. Her whole body tensed up as she wrapped her forelegs around him in a death grip. Chris held Lyra tightly in his arms as he let her ride out her orgasm. Her marehood continued clenching down on him tightly as she came over and over again. Soon her body fell limp, breaking their kiss as her head too fell back. She could barely keep her hold on Chris as she struggled just to open her eyes to look up at him. Chris smiled down at the temporarily incapacitated mare, happy that he was able to please his lover so much. He kissed and lightly bare her bottom lip, keeping himself inside her, letting her bask in the afterglow of her orgasm. Lyra's lips turned up into a soft smile as she finally started to come around, regaining control of her body. Her hoof slowly slid off Chris's back and started to rub his sides gently. She finally opened her eyes a little, looking up at her human lover. She hummed happily. Chris beamed down at the unicorn, still in his arms, leaning down to kiss her on the lips one more time, making the unicorn giggle. Lyra looked up at him in a slight daze, but something was off. She felt like something was missing. There was a lack of something that should have been there after their passionate lovemaking. Her eyes snapped open as what was missing dawned on her. She looked up at Chris with a somber and a confused expression. "You didn't finish?" she asked, stammering a little on the last word, sounding a little depressed. "What, was I bad? Did you not like it?" she asked, a little worried, rubbing his sides with her hooves a little harder. Chris gave her a loving and gentle smile. "You were wonderful, Lyra. I just wanted to make sure you were happy and that you could enjoy yourself." He reassured her with another kiss. Lyra kept her somber gaze on him. But you were supposed..." It's okay, Lyra. We don't have to keep going if you want to rest now. I'm just glad I was able to make you happy, he interrupted her. Lyra didn't like this at all, not one bit. It was amazingly sweet that he held back for her, and it was impressive that he could even last this long, but he was supposed to finish with her, and she started to say something, but that awful, empty feeling started to return as Chris started to move to get off her. No, she shouted, squeezing his hips tightly with her hind legs and the best she could, stopping him from leaving her. No, no, Chris. I want to go all the way with you, she begged him in a desperate expression. I want you to come inside me, she stuttered, a little on the dirty word. Chris swallowed thickly. Lyra, it's okay. He was interrupted as a mirror hood squeezed down on his still hard length like a vice. Lyra, relax a bit, he said through a somewhat pained voice. Lyra ignored his demands, and she started to roll her hips around his length, scraping his sensitive tip around her inner walls. Come on, big guy, make me your mare, she cooed weakly, still trying to recover from her previous orgasm. Still squeezing down on him. Fuck! Chris moaned loudly, using the curse word from his old world. He could feel all the soft ripples of her inner walls clamping down on him, driving him insane. His body shivered slightly as his mind started to blink, being replaced with his mind-numbing pleasure. Lyra, he grunted as his natural instinct started to take over, pushing his hips forward on their own. Yes? Lyra hissed in satisfaction as his hard warmth sank back into her where it belonged. That's it, big guy, she cooed, wrapping her hind legs around his waist, just in case he tried to leave again. Oh, wow, he's just being aggressive now. Chris gritted his teeth, pulling himself back out of her. He could feel her suckling and trying to pull him back in, working to draw out his climax as quickly as possible. Loud groans and growls started to escape his lips as his throbbing length made its way back inside her, having to push through her vice-like grip with a great deal of force. Okay, why did you just go aggressive? Damn. I know you've been longing for it, but come on, Lyra, don't be like a jerk about it. Lyra's breathing became heavier and more drawn out as he picked up speed. She could feel his member started to pulse and twitch inside her. He was getting close now, so very close. Yes, that's it. She whimpered, feeling her own climax building. She didn't let that stop her though. She kept flexing her muscles as hard as she could, milking him with her mirrorhood. Chris was barely aware of anything now. He was lost to his own pleasure, letting his body take over completely. His hips slammed into the unicorn with a powerful slap that echoed loudly in the room every time their hips collided. Lyra was starting to lose her grip on him as he slammed into her over and over. The pleasure was becoming too great, making her lose all composure. She had no choice but to relax her body against the onslaught of his thrusting. Her horn started to glow brightly again as a great pressure started to build up inside her, just like the time he used his fingers. She was close, but that didn't matter because he was almost there. She could feel him expanding inside her just a little longer. Oh God, Lyra, Chris cried out, slamming inside her faster and faster. She knew instantly what was coming. Inside, please, Lyra begged, holding him tightly against her body. As her horn radiated light, she could feel him start to swell within her, making her mirror clench down on him and reflex, coaxing out his end even more. Lyra! Chris cried, hilting into her with one final powerful thrust, hitting the deepest part of her mirrorhood as he released everything he had into her. Lyra felt the first burst of burning hot liquid splatter against her deepest barrier, making her push her hips against his, ensuring she took everything he had. Another wave of his essence exploded into her, coating her walls with its warmth, triggering her own climax, filling the room with a bright golden light as a sea of swirling stars exploded from her horn. For the second time that night, her whole body arched upward, pushing against Chris's stomach as her back hooves buckled and locked in the air. She wanted to cry out and scream his name, but she couldn't. All that came out of her mouth was a loud, drawn-out cry that could easily be heard outside the walls of his home. Chris clasped on top of his lover's chest as her insides continued to convulse and milk him. He shot rope after rope of his seed deep inside her, filling her sex with his fiery essence. Groaning loudly, he stayed like that, riding out his orgasm, trying to piece his mind back together. The two lovers stayed like this for a while, clinging to each other. The only sounds that could be heard was the sounds of their heavy breathing. Chris, Lyra exhaled slowly in a blissful pleasure as she indulged herself in the joyful feeling of being filled with her lover's essence and finally becoming one with her cult friend. Chris collapsed to his side, taking Lyra in his arms with him. The two lovers embraced each other on their sides like that in a comfortable silence for a long while, their foreheads pressed together, enjoying the blissful afterglow of their lovemaking. They both opened their eyes, looking at each other with a half-lit gaze. Lyra was the first to break the silence. I love you, Chris. I've never been so happy, she admitted. truthfully, being brightly at her girlfriend. I love you too, Lyra, and I was an idiot for not seeing that sooner. Chris admitted truthfully, smiling brightly at his mirror friend. Lyra gave him a playful lick across the lips. Yes, you are an idiot, Lyra replied. Chris just chuckled, holding her a little tighter in his arms. You better hold up on your promise to keep going tonight, Lyra teased, smirking at him. Chris nodded his head slowly, still in a little bit of a daze. Of course, my love. Lyra smiled, nuzzling closer to him in silent content. I can't wait to tell Bonnie what happened, she thought to herself. She's gonna be so happy, and then maybe when she gets to know Chris, we can become a family. That's a challenge right there, Lyra. Holy Luna, that's a challenge for me. I'm sorry this took me so long to get out, but I was have a lot of trouble with this chapter. Plus, it's my first Clop, but I hope you guys can enjoy it. And if not, there's still one more chapter which should be a fun one. I'm sorry this was so long. Please don't hate me. Long chapters are fun. Puss. Long chapters are fun. Even though my voice becomes like a little bit hoarse at the end of it, but they're fun. Anyways, guys, woo! Next chapter is gonna be a doozy. Also, freaking Bonbon wanted this not to work out. You know, fuck you. I still hate Bonbon for right now, because I saw the beginning of the other chapter and she's wondering how long Bonbon's Lyra's taking. I'm just like, it worked out well. So fuck you. I know she was like, I feel like she thought like she's hesitating so much that they're just playing around. Anyways, guys, that's been the chapter. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching and listening to me like you guys do, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye. What's up, man? Alright.
Yeah.
I'm glitching up. Glitching out here.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Alright, sounds like a plan for tonight.
Whoa! God! Not the time.
It's never the time.